Hello, everybody. On behalf of the Highland Park Public Library, we'd like to welcome you to Library in Your Living Room. We're pleased to present Shelf Isolation, a weekly mini-series about books, culture, and what to read next. I'm Laurie, and this is the library staff. In this episode, we're excited to share with you what we've been reading, watching, and or listening to during our self-isolation. To begin our mini-series, I'm going to turn things over to our Information and Reader Services librarian, Catherine.
Hello. So I have two books to share that I have read recently. The first one is called Waiting for an Echo, The Madness of American Incarceration by Christine Montrose. It sounds very boring. It is not. It is actually kind of a page turner. It's about people with mental illness who are in the prison system and why there are so many people who have mental illness who are incarcerated and how the prisons are not really equipped to handle them and how some practices in the United States actually cause mental illness in the prisons, for example, solitary confinement and other things like that. But the book really kind of goes from place to place. It's written by a psychologist, and she really talks about the personal stories of a lot of the people, both who work in prisons, people who are prisoners, and really gets to know them. And in that way, it's a little bit like Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Laurie Gottlieb. She doesn't stay with one person through the whole book the way that Gottlieb does, or even a few people through the whole book. But there are a lot of interesting people that you meet along the way. Tom Dart makes an appearance, whom you may know as Cook County Sheriff. His name comes up in the news in our local newspapers. So this is really a good book that is informative and educational, but also not at all dry and boring, like some of the books that I read. I'm sorry, but I like that kind of book. And then another book that I have to share is The Loneliness of the Long Distance Cartoonist by Adrian Tomine. This is a graphic novel or graphic memoir, and it's not too long, but it's sort of told in little vignettes chronologically, and it's about his struggle to sort of find acceptance in his career and really just the human feeling of wanting to be liked, and just ways he's felt left out, people who just can't get his name right, people who in one case, someone was just deliberately cruel and at an awards ceremony called a bunch of people up on stage as winners and said, "Oh no, you're not really the winners," and had them sit back down. It kind of ends with someone saying, why would anyone do that? And I don't know. I mean, why would anyone do that? But it was kind of a quiet little book and a nice reminder that loneliness is not something that we invented in 2020. It's something that we all feel throughout our lives. And there is kind of a subtle counter narrative through it in that he does fall in love, gets married, starts a family. And we kind of see that in the background as he continues to have these feelings, but you also kind of realize that there is also a different part of his life that he's not focusing on in this book. So it was a quiet book. I really enjoyed it. His drawing style is pretty simple, but I think he really nails people's faces. That's one of the best things about his drawing. I actually have not read any of his previous books, which is probably one of the reasons why he feels so lonely. But I would, after reading this one, go on and read more of them. So those are the two that I have. And from there, I'll go to Will.
Thank you, Catherine. Near the end of last year, going into this year, I've been learning more about the beautiful game of soccer. It's been a journey that's taken me from complaining about nil-nil ties to now having very strong opinions about video-assisted referees. Spoilers, they're just as blind as the regular ones. It was with this in mind, along with the news of his passing, that I decided to watch the Diego Maradona documentary that came out in 2019. For those of you who don't know, Maradona is an Argentinian footballer who is considered one of the greatest to ever take the pitch and is credited with both the most controversial goal in World Cup history, just look up Hand of God, along with a 60-yard, 10-second dash through 4 different players that's usually credited as the goal of the century. By the by, he did both things in the same game within minutes of each other. The documentary uses archival footage to focus on the time of his life when he was moved to a SSC Naples squad in southern Italy that was looked down upon due to their poor play and connections to the mafia. His skills ended up propelling the team to both local and Europa League success and made him a worldwide star that was eventually broken by the pressure of trying to fulfill that role. One of my favorite early lines in the films comes from his trainer, who finds him so enjoyable to work with and told him at one point, for Diego, I would go to the ends of the world. For Maradona, I wouldn't take a step. To which Diego explained that Maradona exists to handle the things that being a poor kid who came from nothing in Argentina couldn't. Even if you don't care about soccer or sports in general, this story is just the right mix of greatness and tragedy to keep things interesting. Now, I will say as a note, because it's archival footage of the era, most of it is either in Italian or Spanish. So be prepared to read lots of subtitles unless you're fluent. You can grab a copy of this from either one of our friendly consortium members or stream it on HBO Max. And with that, I will pass it along to Laurie.
Thanks, William. This week, I wanted to talk about a couple of books. One is The Lost Pianos of Siberia by a British journalist named Sophy Roberts. And she has taken it upon herself to travel to Siberia in search of pianos that have been taken there by exiles or administrators that were sent when Siberia was, well, actually, even before the Gulag, under the Tsar, when as far back as the Decembrists who were sent there. And she goes into the long and very illustrious history of Russian piano building and a little bit of piano building in general, how the piano became an instrument. I don't know much about music, and I'm certainly not a piano expert, but it was really interesting. She, finds these pianos that have been played by famous people and people women who had followed their spouses into exile and somehow managed to drag a piano along behind them that really sustained people in very difficult circumstances. And many of the pianos, Siberia has aside from being cold, it's also in the very short summer, it's really humid and it really wreaks havoc on pianos. So some of them are basically skeletons of pianos. I thought it was a really interesting book. I have to say that I do have an interest. I like reading these histories of Siberia and Russia in general, so it may not be for everyone. But again, that was The Lost Pianos of Siberia by Sophy Roberts. And the other book that I wanted to talk about, because Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday is coming up, a book that I reread that came out a while ago, Hellhound on His Trail by Hampton Sides. Hampton Sides is also a journalist and an author. He writes what's called narrative nonfiction. And in this book, he is talking about James Earl Ray, who killed Dr. Martin Luther King, and how he escaped. I mean, it's really kind of an incredible story, how he escaped prison. He was in jail and he escaped prison by hiding in like a bread bin. I'm pointing because there's a bin over here. Anyway, and then he, it wasn't right after that, but somehow he decided that he was going to, kill Dr. Martin Luther King. And anyway, it's really a riveting story, a very, very sad story. And also, like often with some of these narrative nonfiction things where you know how it's going to end and you really wish that you could step into the book and make it end differently. So I would suggest, and we've talked in the past, during shelf isolation about rereading things. I reread it, it holds up really well, and it's another book that I would suggest to you. So that's all I have. As far as books, I did want to give a little shout out to one of our databases called Opposing Viewpoints, and it's such a polarizing time now. I just wanted to point out that the library has many databases that we subscribe to, and Highland Park residents or anyone with a Highland Park Library card can use them to get actual vetted information on a variety of subjects. And Opposing Viewpoints is one where you can look up subjects and you can see opinions and facts that might help you form an informed opinion. I know I've said opinion several times in a row there, but that's what happens when you don't write a script ahead of time. So, so yeah, I would again give a shout out to Opposing Viewpoints database, and all of our other databases. I would encourage everyone to look through them and see that you can find some really interesting things. So with that, I am going to sign us out. As always, please remember we're here for you. We're available for comments, questions, concerns that you may have, and you can reach us online through Facebook at facebook.com/HPLibrary, through Twitter. Our Twitter is @HPLibrary, or via email at hppla@hplibrary.org. We are currently closed to the public, but we are working in the library, and you can call us from 11 to 7 Monday through Thursday, and from 11 to 5 on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at 847-432-0216. And we also, you can request books, and when you're notified they're ready, you can pick them up at our grab and go, which is also during those hours. Our music today was Carefree by Kevin MacLeod. You can find more information about this and the titles we mentioned in our show notes today. Okay, everybody, this is us signing off. Until we see you next, stay safe.